Hey guys, this is Historian Couch, your narrator tonight. We're about to step quietly into the shadowy marble streets of ancient Greece, past flickering oil lamps, through breezy stone courtyards, and into the half-awake minds of people who, just like you, had trouble falling asleep. So go ahead, sit back, relax, plug in your earphones, or just keep the phone near your ears. Close your eyes if you like. Let the weight of the day start to slip away. Let's begin. Imagine it's late, really late, in the heart of Athens. The agora, once bustling with chatter, has emptied into silence. You walk barefoot over smooth stone slabs, their edges worn by centuries of sandals and hurried debates. The cicadas have gone still, and the air smells faintly of warm dust, olive oil, and the smoke curling from a brazier someone forgot to extinguish. You aren't the only one awake. A hunched figure sits outside his doorway, chewing something unidentifiable and muttering quietly to a passing cat. A child peers out from behind a linen curtain, wide-eyed, and whispering lullabies to a clay doll. Somewhere, a poet is reciting verses to the moon because she's the only one listening. Insomnia wasn't invented in the age of glowing screens and caffeine. It's older than democracy. The Athenians, for all their philosophical brilliance, didn't master the art of sleep, not even close. You probably won't survive this night in their world without being offered fermented fish juice as a sleep aid. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is, especially if you're listening from under a blanket fortress at 3:17 a.m. Anyway, the night stretches on. You drift past stalls covered in linen cloth, shielding figs, olives, and crumbling cheese wheels from the morning flies. The amphora stacked nearby emit a faint vinegary tang. Someone's been storing wine too long again. A dog barks in the distance. You ignore it. You're trying to walk off your restlessness like everyone else. Insomnia didn't come with sympathy in ancient Greece. It came with suspicion. Was it a sign of divine interference? A guilty conscience? Or were you simply being melodramatic? A common remedy? Walk it out until you collapse. The Stoics would have approved. They believed discipline overruled discomfort. If you were awake, well, maybe it was the perfect time to re-examine your life's moral trajectory, or reorganize your terracotta storage jars. One theory among modern scholars, yes, historians still argue whether it's true, is that the ancient Greeks saw night not as a time for rest, but for philosophy. If you couldn't sleep, maybe you were destined for something profound. Or at least to listen to someone profoundly boring talk about geometry until your eyes betrayed you. As you stroll farther, the Acropolis looms darkly above, a silent sentinel of sleepless generations. You imagine priests huddled in its upper chambers centuries ago, scribbling omens by candlelight, or pacing just like you, thinking perhaps Athena would send them sleep if they kept whispering her name under their breath. You come upon a tiny home with smoke curling from the roof tile gaps. Inside, an old woman stirs something in a small clay pot. You watch through the window as she drops in a sprig of something green, possibly chamomile, possibly something illegal. A baby wails faintly in the next room. The woman doesn't blink. She knows the sound. It's the same cry her goats make when they've lost their footing. You move on. A group of young men whisper beneath a fig tree, passing around a wineskin and laughing quietly at jokes that don't translate well across centuries. One of them leans his head back and stares up at the stars. "Why do they never blink?" he mutters. The others are too tired to answer. In a narrow alley, the air grows cool and sharp. You step over scattered olive pits, duck past a sleeping mule, and notice a papyrus scroll propped in a windowsill. Someone was up reading, or writing, or pretending to, in case the gods were watching. Sleep was a moral issue in many parts of Greek society. Too much, laziness. Too little, possibly madness. If you were an insomniac, you walked a narrow line between wisdom and delirium. You stopped at a small fountain. The water trickles softly. A marble nymph stares eternally into the pool, her expression caught between boredom and serenity. You splash your face. It doesn't help. Nearby, a candle burns behind a curtain of woven reeds. Inside, a man recites Homer to an audience of exactly one, himself. He speaks aloud, not for anyone's benefit, but because ancient poetry loses its rhythm if kept silent. He falters, yawns, and keeps going. Maybe if he makes it to book 24, he'll pass out. There's something comforting in knowing that the world never fully slept, even back then. That there was always someone else lying awake, wondering whether gods dreamed, or whether sheep really helped. Eventually you find a stone bench and sit. Your legs ache faintly from wandering, but your mind hums on. In the distance, an owl calls once, then again. The Athenians would have taken it as a sign from Athena, wisdom's quiet mascot peeking in on the sleepless. You lie back and stare up at the sky. The stars are strange but familiar. The constellations haven't changed. That sheep-shaped cluster up there? You'll be counting those soon enough. But not yet. There's still more night to walk through. You sit on the stone bench a little longer, letting your eyes adjust to the night. There's a hum to Athens after dark, a quiet rhythm. Somewhere in the distance, a lyre plucks out a slow, meandering melody. You can't see who's playing. You don't need to. The music floats through the alleyways like warm mist. The olive trees nearby rustle gently in the breeze. You run your fingers along the bark of one beside you, its surface gnarled and smooth in places, like it's been watching people wander past for centuries. And it has. Some of these trees are already a few hundred years old in your time, and they'll live long after you've stopped counting sheep. Ancient Greeks weren't strangers to sleeplessness. In fact, some of them leaned into it. You might picture philosophers sleeping soundly on scroll pillows after long debates. But more often than not, they were pacing courtyards at odd hours, murmuring to themselves about virtue, justice, or whether shadows had feelings. As the wind brushes past your cheek, you catch a scent that's hard to place, something earthy and bitter. Maybe olive oil, maybe fig bark, or maybe it's just the accumulated history of a city that's been trying to sleep for thousands of years. You pass by a narrow portico where someone's strung up a curtain of beads. It clinks softly in the breeze. Inside, a woman grinds herbs with a slow, methodical rhythm. She isn't rushing. She's not even looking at the mortar. Just working from memory, waiting for sleep to visit her kitchen, like an old friend who shows up late. Sleep, in Greek thought, wasn't just a physical thing. It was a god, Hypnos, brother of Thanatos, the god of death, and son of Nyx, the night itself. No pressure, right? If you couldn't fall asleep, maybe Hypnos had wandered off. Or maybe he was punishing you. Maybe you hadn't poured out enough wine last week in his honor. Ancient remedies for insomnia were sometimes religious, sometimes herbal, and sometimes just wildly optimistic. Some Greeks believed the gentle rustling of olive leaves could lull the spirit into rest. These trees were sacred, Athena's gift to Athens, and every branch carried a quiet blessing. Some people slept beneath them intentionally. You lie down on the packed dirt beside one, resting your head on your forearm. The bark is cool behind you, and the leaves overhead filter the moonlight into sleepy shapes. You try not to think, but your brain, much like a Greek dramatist, loves a monologue. A philosopher once claimed that true rest could only come when the soul was untroubled. You briefly wonder if your soul is arguing with itself under the weight of too much barley bread, or if the gods are just bored and playing dice with your dreams. One strange little tidbit from ancient Athens: wealthy homes sometimes had painted ceilings with constellations, not for decoration, but to mimic the feeling of sleeping under the open sky. Historians still argue whether this was spiritual, aesthetic, or just a clever way to keep kids from wandering off at night. There's something timeless about lying under stars, even painted ones. You can understand why they did it. The sky was their most consistent bedtime story. A distant dog barks again, this time closer. You sit up. The moon has shifted, casting long slivers of light across the stone path like spilled silver. You shuffle onward, your sandals crunching faintly over the gravel. A guard nods to you from a temple gate, half asleep, half uninterested. His spear is leaning against the wall, and he's chewing something bitter-looking. Possibly myrrh. Possibly a stick he found out of boredom. You wave. He doesn't wave back. Down a side path, you spot an older man, probably a merchant, sitting cross-legged by a brazier. He's muttering prayers under his breath, not loud enough to be noticed, just loud enough to make sure Hypnos hears him. He tosses something small into the fire. The smoke curls upward, then vanishes. In the quiet, you start to notice the little things: the flicker of shadows moving behind shutters, the faint laughter of someone trying not to wake a household, the occasional cough from a neighbor with more wine than sense. It's like the city is breathing around you, slow, uneven, half asleep. You duck beneath a low stone archway and find yourself in a small courtyard. It's overgrown, but peaceful. Vines climb the columns. A cracked statue of Hermes watches you from the far end. His nose is missing. You suspect someone knocked it off by accident and then claimed it was symbolic. In a corner of the yard, someone has left a shallow clay bowl filled with water. For birds, or spirits, or both. The Greeks were thorough like that. You crouch beside the bowl and dip your fingers in. It's cooler than the night air. As you trail your hand through it, you wonder how many other hands have done the same. How many people before you lay awake, searching for some small thing, like rippling water, to distract them from their own minds. The rustling of the olive tree continues behind you. Soft, soothing. You let your breathing fall into rhythm with it. One inhale for every sway of the leaves. One exhale for every pause in the breeze. It almost works. But a distant door creaks open, and someone begins softly singing. A lullaby, maybe, or a hymn, or just a bored soul with too much time and too little sleep. You stand again, stretch your arms, and continue your wandering. There's more to see, and you hope sleep somewhere on the horizon. You round a narrow corner, the kind where ivy drips down from the rooftops, and stray cats lounge like retired philosophers. The street is barely wider than your outstretched arms, and the air carries a trace of soot and mint. Somewhere nearby, someone is baking bread in a clay oven. At this hour, maybe insomnia is the city's secret economy. But tonight, you're not here for bread. You're here for sheep. Yes, real, actual, woolly sheep. Because while the expression counting sheep has been passed down through cozy bedtime cliches and fleece-soft nursery rhymes, the ancient Greeks may very well have done it literally, without irony, without animation, and definitely without pajamas. See, livestock wasn't just food in ancient Greece. It was status, currency, companionship. You didn't need a sleep app when you had a pen full of nervous, bleeding investments outside your door. You reach a low wall where a small herd dozes under the watch of a half-asleep boy. He stirs when you approach, then decides you look too tired to pose a threat. He yawns, scratches his head, and leans back against a bag of grain. The sheep stir occasionally, soft hoof scrapes, a faint meh, one sneeze that feels strangely human. You perch on the wall and start to count them. 1, 2, 3. It's less soothing than advertised. They aren't standing in neat rows. They wander. They sniff each other. One of them is chewing on a fig leaf. Another stares at you like it knows you're faking your yawn. Still, this was the method for some, especially shepherds and farmers, whose days started early and ended late. Counting livestock was part routine, part meditation, a mental checklist of wool and bone. You'd drift off not because it was exciting, but because it was familiar, safe, repetitive. The ancient equivalent of scrolling through yesterday's grocery list. The shepherd boy next to you sighs. My uncle says if you reach 30 without falling asleep, you're cursed, he mutters. You get to 26 and pause, suddenly nervous. Historians still argue whether counting animals to fall asleep was a widespread tradition or more of a pastoral practice that got mythologized over time. But evidence suggests some version of it existed, especially in rural communities. You'd lie in your bed of straw, hear the rustling from the animal pens, and start numbering. Not sheep alone, goats, chickens, even bees in some accounts. Whatever you had. The idea wasn't to finish. It was to forget you were counting at all. The shepherd stands and stretches. Sometimes I sing to them. They like Homer. You raise your eyebrows. No, not that Homer, he adds. I mean Homer, the goat. He gets nervous. He whistles softly, and one of the sheep trots over and nuzzles his side. You stay there a moment longer, letting the low bleats and rhythmic movements settle over your senses like a woolen blanket. The smell is earthy, but not unpleasant. Just barn-like, the kind of scent that makes you think of warm fires and coarse fabric. Counting animals wasn't the only repetitive strategy. Some Greeks chanted names, others repeated philosophical aphorisms or lines of poetry. There are records of certain insomniacs reciting their family trees, out loud until their eyes betrayed them. You try that next. Your family tree is imaginary, but it works surprisingly well. My grandfather was a potter. His father was a potter. His father was probably also a potter, but nobody liked him much. The boy chuckles. It's strange, this shared stillness. No drama, no grand myth unfolding. Just two sleepless people, watching sheep who couldn't care less about either of you. You glance up at the stars again. The ancients didn't just see sheep in pens. They saw them in the sky. Constellations named after rams, bulls, and mythical herders. The sheep were celestial before they were domestic. They'd been counted for centuries before you ever curled up with a bedtime story. One odd little fragment from a 5th century tablet describes a ritual where children were taught to count by tracing the movements of goats drawn in wax on their clay slates. The logic? Counting moving shapes helped focus the mind without tiring it. The irony? Most of them fell asleep halfway through the ritual. That was the point. You close your eyes. The breeze picks up, gentle and cool. The sheep shift again, some lying down, others giving up and blinking slowly. One of them sneezes again. You open your eyes. The boy is asleep, finally. You envy him, but only a little. You rise from the wall and tiptoe away, leaving the sheep to their dreams. In the distance, a rooster crows prematurely, then stops, probably embarrassed. You smile. The streets are still empty, but they feel less lonely now. Every stone step, every drifting sound seems to hum with the knowledge that sleep, for all its stubbornness, will come, eventually, even for you. The sheep fade behind you, swallowed by the soft dark and the quiet murmurs of sleeping animals. The streets wind downward, leading you toward the edge of the agora, where the stones are slick with evening dew, and the air feels thick with something unspoken. You're not alone. A faint clinking sound draws your attention, a wooden ladle against clay. You follow it. Tucked beside a shuttered apothecary is a small stall, barely large enough for one person. An old woman, with a shawl drawn high over her brow, is heating something in a shallow bronze pot. The scent hits you before anything else, warm, bitter, earthy, and vaguely floral. Poppy tea, or maybe something more experimental. She doesn't look up when you approach. She just stirs, slow and steady. Can't sleep? She mutters, without turning. Her voice sounds like dry leaves crumpling in hand. You nod, not trusting yourself to speak. She seems like the kind of woman who'd know if you lied. She reaches beneath the stall and pulls out a small cup, glazed and chipped from years of use. She pours the liquid slowly, watching it steam and swirl like clouds gathering in miniature. Take a sip, or don't. Either way, you'll still lie awake, but it might soften the edge. You take the cup, press it to your lips, warm, faintly bitter, definitely infused with something mildly suspicious. Maybe valerian root, maybe poppy seed milk, maybe the last remnants of a philosopher's patience. The Greeks were herbalists long before it was fashionable. Their world buzzed with teas, oils, tinctures, and vinegars, each with its own sleep-related myth attached. Some believed rosemary chased away nightmares. Others swore by a mix of honey and vinegar to dull the mind's whirl. One peculiar remedy involved soaking lettuce in wine and pressing the leaves against your temples. Did it work? Historians still argue whether it was medicinal, symbolic, or just the desperate flailing of someone who hadn't slept in days. The old woman watches you with eyes like storm clouds. Some dreams are too loud, she says simply. You finish the cup. She doesn't ask for payment. You leave 2 small coins anyway. One for the drink, one for the unspoken kindness. As you walk away, the taste lingers. Something like fennel, something like regret. You pass a small shrine set into the wall, a crumbling relief of Hypnos reclining, eyes closed, wings folded behind his ears. A soft offering of grain lies at the base, carefully arranged into a spiral. Someone, somewhere, had hoped it might earn them sleep. You begin to feel it, just slightly. The loosening in your shoulders, the slow warmth behind your eyes, the distant tug of rest at the edge of your awareness. But your legs keep moving, down an alley, past a cat cleaning its face like it's preparing for a midnight symposium, past another door left ajar, through which you glimpse a man snoring soundly on a straw mat, legs akimbo like a statue, fallen sideways. His lamp still burns. He probably fell asleep mid-sentence. Sleep wasn't always private in ancient Greece. Entire families often shared one room, if not one bed. Privacy was for the rich, and even then, often a luxury they didn't bother with. You remember reading somewhere that certain Athenians deliberately stayed up late, waiting until their neighbors slept so they could think in peace. That or eavesdrop. Night was a time of secrets, and not always quiet ones. Still, the herbs begin to work. You feel a strange calm settle into your limbs. Not drowsiness exactly, but something softer than before. A willingness to sit, to be still, to let the night unfold without trying to direct it. You rest on a low step. The stone is cool beneath you. Above, a vine of night-blooming flowers has begun to open, releasing a faint, sweet scent into the air. Jasmine, maybe, or something that doesn't have a name anymore. You breathe it in, slowly, deeply, and for a moment the night holds you, not like a cage, like a cradle. Nearby, a pair of lovers whisper beneath a fig tree. Their voices are soft, uncertain, wrapped in shyness and warmth. One of them giggles quietly. It's not annoying. It's oddly comforting. Proof that some people find comfort in company, even at this hour. You hear a distant lyre again, this time closer. A steady pluck, 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 like someone tuning the strings of their own exhaustion. Another sip of tea might have tipped you over into sleep, but just one was enough to make the noise inside your head a little quieter. It's not magic, but it's something. The old woman's words echo back. Some dreams are too loud. You wonder if some silences are loud too. And maybe, just maybe, sleep isn't something you chase. Maybe it's something you wait for, patiently, with the right herbs in your belly and the right weight in your limbs. The lyre fades again. The sky begins its slow change toward gray. You stay seated, breathing, waiting, counting jasmine petals instead of sheep. The sky above Athens is still mostly dark, but there's a whisper of silver gathering at the horizon. Not morning, yet, just a hint of it. That liminal hour where even the stars start to second-guess themselves. You stretch your legs. The stone step has molded to your shape, or maybe it's just your bones giving in to the night. Sleep still hasn't arrived, but neither has restlessness. You're somewhere in between, suspended like a fig leaf caught in still air. Behind you, a rooster clears its throat again, then wisely thinks better of it. The quiet remains, delicate as silk thread. And in the distance, the city exhales. This is where dreams would begin, if you had any. Instead, you decide to wander again, this time toward the edge of the city, where fields brush up against sacred groves. The roads are narrower here, more dirt than stone. You pass a cluster of sleeping goats, curled like lumpy cushions beneath a crumbling portico. One opens a lazy eye as you walk past, then dismisses you entirely. You envy its priorities. A few minutes on, you find yourself outside a simple stone house. A flickering oil lamp glows inside, not from insomnia, but ritual, because not everyone avoided sleeplessness. Some invited it in, especially the mystics. In certain parts of Greece, sleepless nights were part of spiritual practice. To stay awake was to court the divine. Temples in places like Epidaurus welcomed those who couldn't sleep. You'd lie on a cold stone floor, surrounded by others who had fasted, prayed, and prepared. Then, hopefully, the gods, or more precisely, Asclepius, god of healing, would send a dream, a message, a cure. You peer inside. A solitary man kneels before a small altar, his eyes closed, lips moving in silent repetition. A carved serpent coils along the altar's edge, Asclepius's sacred symbol. He's probably been there for hours. Historians still debate whether these ritual sleep waits were effective or theatrical. There are clay tablets from sanctuary sites covered in testimonials, people claiming their pain vanished overnight, that visions healed what medicine couldn't. Maybe it was faith. Maybe it was rest disguised as revelation. Or maybe something else entirely. You leave the man to his devotions and continue toward the grove. Here the trees grow taller. Olive gives way to cypress and laurel. Their leaves whisper differently, sharper, a little more secretive. You pause at a small carved bench set beside a boundary stone. Carved into the stone are barely visible letters. Night herself. She wasn't just darkness to the Greeks, she was primordial. A mother to many things, including Hypnos and Thanatos, and dreams themselves. Imagine that. Sleep being the child of night, not just something that happens in it. It makes sense in a poetic way. Night sets the stage. Sleep steps out from her shadow. You sit on the bench. The breeze here smells different, cleaner, almost metallic. Cypress always smells like memory, like something you forgot to forget. Your eyes drift upward again. The stars are thinning out now, but one cluster still shines sharply. Pleiades. To the Greeks, they were the seven sisters, and their rising marked seasons, travel, planting, but also sleeplessness. Sailors often blamed the sisters for rough waters and lost sleep. A scapegoat in the sky. You try naming them in your head. Maya, Taygete, Electra, and then your memory falters. Maybe sleep has rubbed off a little after all. As your eyelids grow heavier, a rustle behind you makes you turn. A young boy, no older than 12, wanders into the grove, carrying a bundle of reeds and a long staff. A little shepherd, maybe late returning home, or maybe like you, just couldn't rest. He notices you, smiles faintly, and sits cross-legged a few feet away. He hums to himself, a soft tune that repeats every few breaths. You listen. No words, just rhythm. Like the night itself is playing backup. He begins to weave the reeds. First, slowly, then with surprising skill. The bundle takes shape, a circle, then tighter and tighter until it becomes a mat, or a pillow, or just something to keep his hands busy. Another strange little tradition. In rural areas of ancient Greece, people often made sleep talismans by hand. Simple objects, woven bits of straw, knotted thread, carved twigs arranged in patterns. Not because they were magic, but because they occupied the part of the brain that liked to talk back at bedtime. If your hands were busy, your thoughts got bored. You watch the boy finish the weaving. He places it gently under his head and lies back in the grass. He doesn't speak, just breathes deeply. Once, twice, as if by will alone, he sleeps. You don't envy him anymore. You just take it as a sign. You lie back on your own patch of grass beside the stone bench. It's uneven and a little damp, but somehow that doesn't matter now. The wind rustles the laurel above you, and you close your eyes, still awake, but less so. And the dreams that haven't come? Maybe they're just walking slowly, like you. The laurel trees sway overhead with the gentlest hush, their narrow leaves murmuring secrets in a language only the night understands. You lie there for a moment, just long enough for your thoughts to drift, then double back, then settle again, like dust on a forgotten windowsill. The boy who wove his sleep mat hasn't stirred. His breathing is so soft, it barely moves the grass. Somewhere, an owl blinks in the dark, and the stars above you seem to blink with it. Time slows down, or maybe it was always like this, and you were the one rushing. Ancient Greek insomniacs didn't have screens to doom scroll, no clocks ticking their failures to sleep. But they did have minds full of theater, plays they'd seen, poems they'd memorized, lives they rehearsed. You imagine someone like you lying on a similar patch of earth 2,000 years ago, trying to recall lines from Sophocles in just the right order until their brain gave up. Repetition again. A theme you've begun to notice. One common habit among the sleepless in ancient times was reciting epic poetry, not aloud, but internally. Homer's Iliad, the Odyssey, or Hesiod's Theogony. These weren't just entertainment. They were mnemonic anchors, predictable rhythms that lulled the overactive mind, like counting sheep, but with cyclopses and wine-dark seas. You try it. Sing muse of the wrath of Achilles. The words feel dusty in your mouth, but solid, anchoring. A slow metronome to mark your thoughts. Historians still argue whether epic poetry was used primarily for religious devotion or personal meditation. Probably both. After all, if you're going to lie awake in the dark, it helps to believe your insomnia is, at the very least, intellectually productive. You roll onto your side and trace a pattern in the dirt. A spiral. Something to keep your fingers busy. Then you hear footsteps. Soft ones. Measured. They belong to a man wrapped in a short woolen cloak. He carries a small lantern, its flickering glow trapped inside a clay screen. He's not a guard. He's not even armed. He's a watcher, a kind of night walker, hired by wealthier Athenian households to check on the quiet after dark. Not to stop crime, necessarily, But to ensure the fire pits were out, that drunken neighbors didn't tumble into you, you watch curiously, and soon a soft clatter comes from a nearby rooftop. A basket descends on a rope. Fountains, and that no one was pacing the streets with too much urgency. You sit up slightly, and he offers a subtle nod. No questions, no suspicions, just acknowledgement. You exist. He exists. That's enough. He stops near a tree and taps gently on its bark 3 times, then waits. You watch curiously, and soon a soft clatter comes from a nearby rooftop. A basket descends on a rope. The watcher opens it, takes out a small clay pot, possibly soup, possibly wine, and replaces it with a handful of dried figs. Then he tugs once, and the basket rises again. An informal midnight trade. Quiet gestures between insomniacs too polite to talk. You smile despite yourself. The watcher continues on, his lantern bobbing like a firefly. You wonder how many nights he's wandered like this, how many sleepless souls he's passed without disturbing. In ancient Greek cities, sleeplessness wasn't always a private burden. There were entire networks of people who knew what it meant to walk slowly through the dark without needing to fix it. Neighbors who left water out. Herbalists who steeped tea without question. Even poets who read their verses under moonlight to small groups seated on rooftops, just waiting for sleep to stumble in. You rise to your feet again. The ground is damp, but your feet are used to it now. As you walk, your hand brushes the rough bark of an old fig tree. Its fruit, not yet ripe, hangs like forgotten lanterns. Some say figs aided digestion. Others claimed they were gifts to the god Dionysus, and not to be eaten after sunset. You're not sure which rule to follow, so you pluck one and carry it gently in your hand, like an offering you're still deciding whether to make. There's an open space ahead, an abandoned training yard, with broken fence posts and smooth packed earth. The sand is cool between your toes as you cross it. This was once a palaestra, a place where men trained, bathed, and debated. Now it's silent, haunted only by memories of muscle and dust. You imagine them, wrestlers, glistening with sweat, laughing as they argued about Play-Doh and then flipped each other into the dirt. Someone, at some point, probably slept here, out of exhaustion or drunkenness or just to feel the sky on their face. You lie down in the center, not because you expect to fall asleep, but because it feels like the right thing to do. The stars are faint now, paling in anticipation of morning, but still, they watch. The fig rests beside you. Your thoughts slow again. Someone nearby sneezes, a goat, a shepherd, the god Pan making a statement. You smile, let it pass, and wait again. Still sleepless, but no longer restless, just drifting, like a forgotten verse from a poet no one quotes anymore. And somehow, that's enough. You lie on your back in the dusty training yard, arms stretched out beside you, like an offering to the gods, though you suspect they're busy elsewhere tonight. A fig rests by your side, forgotten. The ground is uneven, small pebbles pressing into your shoulder blades, but you don't move. Not because you're comfortable, because stillness has become its own sort of comfort. Overhead, the stars are fewer now. The sky is taking on a pale blue hue, hesitant and bruised. That slow stretch toward morning that comes not with fanfare, but with silence. A careful, creeping light. You close your eyes, not in sleep, just to see what dreams might come knocking if they think you're not watching. Instead, a voice arrives, dry, amused, and unmistakably real. You're going to catch a cold lying there. You blink one eye open. A man stands over you, wrapped in a robe that looks like it used to be white. His beard is uneven, his sandals worn thin. He smells faintly of charcoal and goat's milk. You sit up slowly, brushing grit from your tunic. Insomnia? He asks, already knowing the answer. You nod. He sighs and sits beside you, groaning like a cracked statue easing into place. I used to think sleep was a sign of laziness, he says. Now I think it's just shy. You don't respond. There's no need. He's one of them, the thinkers, the ones who prowl the night because the day is too loud. Ancient Greece didn't lack philosophers, and some of the most restless minds were exactly that, restless. Plato once wrote that the soul never sleeps, only the body does. And some nights, the soul refuses to tuck in. You're beginning to believe it. The man beside you hums to himself. I once knew a student who couldn't sleep unless he repeated every syllogism he knew. Started with Aristotle, ended with headaches. He chuckles. You do too. Historians still argue, he continues, whether sleeplessness led to philosophy, or philosophy led to sleeplessness. You raise an eyebrow. Either way, he adds, here we are, awake and dusty. The man picks up a stick and begins to draw shapes in the dirt. Triangles, circles, lines that look like boats. Sometimes I sketch problems, he murmurs. Not to solve them, just to see if they're real. You watch him in silence. His stick moves slowly, looping over and around his own footprints. The Greeks had a complicated relationship with sleep. It was seen as necessary, yes, but also suspicious. Too much sleep, and you were decadent. Too little, and you were unhinged. The right balance was elusive, and those who found it rarely bragged about it, probably because they were asleep. You glance down at the geometric doodles. They resemble constellations, or maybe just a tangled thought. The man pats his knees and rises. Well, that's enough wisdom for one dirt nap. Good luck, friend. He walks away without waiting for a reply, disappearing into the narrowing shadows of the pre-dawn. You stay seated a while longer, studying the strange diagrams in the sand. ... And you brush them away with your foot. The city is beginning to stir. A dog barks once in the distance. Someone clangs a pot against stone. A rooster clears his throat, and this time he means it. The sky above is now definitively not night, but not yet day. That strange gray corridor between things. The kind of moment poets chase and insomniacs inhabit. You rise, stretch, and decide to head toward the fountain square. You're not thirsty, but you crave movement again. Something simple to do with your limbs while your brain refuses to go quiet. You pass a bakery where smoke is just beginning to curl from the roof vent. Bread. Real bread this time. The scent is heavier than earlier. Richer, sweeter. Your stomach remembers it hasn't eaten. There's a bench beside the fountain. It's stone and cracked and slightly damp. You sit anyway. The water gurgles lazily, droplets catching the faint morning light like tiny offerings. A cat pads over, eyes half-lidded, and sits beside you without invitation. She stares at the water with philosophical disdain. "Let me guess," you murmur. "You're tired too." She doesn't respond, obviously, but she doesn't leave either. The fountain's sound is rhythmic, predictable, almost sleep-like. You begin to count the splashes. 1, 2, 3. You lose track by 7. That's progress. You think of the philosopher again, his robe, his sketches, his strange dirt-drawn dreams. And you wonder, how many other thinkers, farmers, healers, children, night watchers, shepherds, and fig stealers have wandered this city in the soft hush before dawn? How many have looked at the stars, the sheep, the clay cups of bitter sleep draft, and felt the same ache? It's a small ache, but it's real. And in that, strangely, there's comfort. The cat yawns. You do too. Maybe this time, maybe now. You close your eyes again. Stillness. Stillness. Still. Still not asleep. Your eyes open to the watery shimmer of dawn. Not full sunlight yet, just the pale, golden brushstrokes that slide across terracotta rooftops and shimmer in fountain water like spilled honey. The city is beginning to stir, reluctantly, like a child called from dreams too early. The cat beside you has disappeared. Maybe she found a warm patch of sun on a windowsill. Maybe she was never there at all. You stretch your legs, your joints crackle like kindling. Sleep still won't come. But somehow, you don't resent it anymore. You stand, and your feet remember the way down to the river. The slow curve past the potter's district, where clay-dusted hands are already shaping vessels in silence. You pass a stall where someone has just hung out linen to dry. It flutters like a chorus of pale ghosts. And then there's the Alyssos, once sacred to nymphs, now a sluggish trickle, winding lazily through reeds and morning mist. You crouch beside it, dipping your fingers into the cool water. The sensation is grounding, real. The current pulls gently, like time itself, always in motion, never in a hurry. Along the riverbank are scattered stones, some carved, some plain, all worn. People once left tokens here, pebbles stacked in prayer, ribbons tied to branches, coins sunk in the silt for favors they weren't sure would be granted. You add a pebble to a nearby pile. Why not? The act is comforting, intentional. Maybe this is how ancient Greek insomniacs coped, with small rituals that didn't demand belief, only attention. It wasn't about whether Hypnos would visit. It was about leaving the door open, just in case. A fisherman walks past you with a net over his shoulder. He nods, not stopping. No one expects conversation this early. Even language feels like a disturbance. Just glances and gestures, and the understanding that yes, you too have been up all night. You wander a little further along the river. Here, the grass is longer, untended. A few wild poppies sway in the breeze like sleepy heads nodding off. You lie down again, because what else is there to do? The grass is softer than the training yard, and it smells of crushed thyme and morning dew. Your eyes drift skyward, and there they are again, the Pleiades. Fainter now, but still watching. In myth, they were chased relentlessly by Orion, immortalized not by triumph, but by escape, turned into stars so they could finally rest. You wonder if sleep is the same, a transformation, a vanishing, a brief rewriting of form. Historians still debate whether dreams were taken seriously in daily Greek life, or mainly viewed as symbolic playthings of the gods. There are records of farmers adjusting their plans based on dreams, of generals changing routes, of mothers naming children after vision figures that arrived mid-slumber. But then again, there are also records of people laughing about it in the agora the next day. Maybe it was both sacred and silly, like insomnia itself. You reach into your pocket and feel the shape of the fig you picked earlier. It's grown softer, riper in your palm. You take a bite. It's sweet. Overripe, really, but comforting. The kind of sweetness that doesn't shout, just hums gently in the back of your throat. Birdsong begins. Not loud, not urgent, just curious. A few notes, then silence, then more. You close your eyes again, not to force sleep, but to rest beneath the sound. Birds are like philosophers of the sky, repeating the same question again and again without expecting an answer. And for once, you don't feel the need to solve anything. A breeze carries the scent of olive wood smoke from the city below. Breakfast fires, people waking, stretching, starting again. You feel no envy, no regret, just a simple weight in your chest. Not sadness, not sleep, something in between. You lie there until the sun reaches the tip of your toes. Still not asleep, but no longer trying. And that, perhaps, is closer to peace than you've been in hours. The warmth of the sun creeps higher now, up your ankles, your knees, nudging your thoughts like a lazy hound pressing for attention. Still, you don't move. The grass beneath you is damp and fragrant, and the earth offers a kind of cushion. Uneven, yes, but somehow forgiving. Above, the sky has finally shifted into day. The last stars have vanished, and the soft wash of early sunlight paints the landscape in pale gold and dusty lavender. The alissos glitters in the corner of your eye like a thread sewn through the hem of the waking world. Sleep, it seems, has lost interest in you, but in its place, this strange and tender stillness. You rise slowly, brushing off your tunic. The fig pit rests in your palm like a smooth stone. You toss it gently into the reeds, a quiet offering to the river nymphs. Whether they're still listening is another matter, but it feels polite. Your feet carry you back toward the city, past morning chatter and the clink of amphorae being arranged in stalls. A woman stoops to milk a goat. A child tries to balance a loaf of bread on his head. A baker sweeps flour from the threshold with short, stiff strokes. Everything is quiet bustle, nothing loud yet, nothing frantic. Just the city stretching itself awake. You move through it like a ghost, or a god, or simply someone who never really slept, but also never truly woke. As you pass the corner of the agora, a familiar scent brushes your face, lavender and burnt honey. You pause, glancing sideways. An herbalist's stand is just being opened. Wooden crates filled with bundled sprigs, clay pots with cork stoppers, bundles of dried leaves tied with twine. The woman arranging them is middle-aged, with soft wrinkles around her eyes and fingernails stained green. She looks up and smiles, like she's been expecting you. "Long night?" she asks, voice low and dry as parchment. You nod. No explanation necessary. She picks up a small jar, taps its side with her knuckle. Poppy syrup, she murmurs. Boil it with goat's milk. Sip before lying down. Not too much, unless you want to talk to ghosts. You blink at her. She shrugs. Historians still argue whether it was used for healing or hallucination, she adds, half smiling. Either way, it quiets the buzzing. You accept the jar, slipping it into your satchel. Other remedies line her shelf. Mallow leaves, mild, cooling. Crushed fennel for digestion. Crumbled valerian root, wrapped in cloth pouches for the pillow. And of course, lavender, Greek insomnia's oldest friend. You thank her with a nod and leave a coin. She waves you off with a gesture somewhere between blessing and dismissal. You wander now with purpose. Not fast, not focused, but simply forward. Back toward your dwelling, a place modest and shaded, tucked beneath the low slope where vines climb the outer wall. You unlatch the door and step inside. Cool air greets you. A clay cup rests on the low table, exactly where you left it. The woven mat on the floor holds the imprint of yesterday's nap. You set the jar of poppy syrup beside the lamp, not for now, just to have it near. You open the shutters a finger's width and let light trickle in like diluted wine. And then, without trying, without demanding, you lie back on the mat, arms across your chest, eyes half-lidded. In this moment, there are no dreams, but there is quiet. Your thoughts drift to the boy in the grove, weaving sleep with his fingers, to the mystic praying to Asclepius, to the philosopher scribbling diagrams in the dirt, to the cat who never answered your questions, and to yourself, walking circles through Athens like a pebble in the pocket of night. You may not sleep now, but tonight, when the stars return and the fig trees whisper again, maybe they'll find you ready. Or not. Either way, you're learning to be still. And in this ancient city, where gods once walked, and men once feared dreams more than death, that stillness might be enough. You close your eyes, not in hope, but in practice. The light flickers through the shutters. Your breathing slows. Stillness again. And still, no sleep. But this time, it doesn't matter, because you're not fighting, you're floating. You wake, or maybe you don't. It's hard to tell. Your eyes are open, but you feel like you've never stopped dreaming. The sunlight is softer now, filtered through the vine-shaded shutters. The poppy syrup jar rests exactly where you left it, untouched. The mat beneath you smells faintly of straw, olive oil, and dust. Something inside you has changed, not in a loud way, not like a thunderclap of revelation, just a quiet recognition that sleep isn't a conquest. It's not something to chase or trap. It's something that sometimes visits and sometimes doesn't. And both are okay. You sit up slowly, like someone still underwater. From outside, the hum of Athens is beginning to rise. A rhythm of sandals on stone, of merchants haggling, of donkeys braying their morning complaints. But inside your little chamber, everything is still and slow. A bowl of water rests near the door. You splash your face, the coolness sharpening the edges of your thoughts. You reach for the jar of poppy syrup, study its opaque surface. You consider using it, but not today. Instead, you return it to its place, like a promise you're not ready to call in. You tie back the shutters and step outside. Your feet know the path now. Down the slope, past the cracked marble column, through the alley of overgrown laurels. There's something ceremonial about your steps. Not heavy, not hurried, just rhythmic, like reciting a hymn in motion. You're not sure where you're going, but your body seems to. At the edge of the district, there's a cluster of stones arranged in a half circle. A small grove. You recognize the fig tree from before, the one that hung its fruit like lanterns. The ground beneath it is dappled with shade, and someone has laid out a woven blanket. An old man sits there, cross-legged. His tunic is patched, his sandals mismatched, and he hums quietly to himself. You hesitate. He gestures to the space beside him. You sit. No introductions, no explanations. Just shared silence. A small copper bowl sits between you. Inside are dried herbs, lavender, fennel, chamomile, maybe even a thread of poppy for bravery. The old man fans the bowl gently, releasing soft curls of smoke that carry a sleepy, woody scent into the air. You inhale deeply, not in desperation, just curiosity. He hums again, a low, repetitive tune, something wordless, older than poetry. You find yourself swaying slightly. You think of the woman at the herbalist's stall, of the night watchman, of the poets and their wandering verses, of the sleepless souls who didn't fight the dark, but folded themselves into it like sheets under a star-heavy sky. Historians still argue whether these quiet rituals were religion, science, or simply habit. Whether the Greeks believed sleep came from the gods or from the gut. Whether they treated insomnia with prayer, philosophy, or warm goat's milk steeped with bitter leaves. But the truth is simpler than all that. They lived with it, just as you are now. Not cured, not conquered, just lived with. The breeze rustles the fig leaves. One drops beside you. The old man doesn't flinch. You think he might be asleep or dreaming with his eyes open. You lie back on the blanket, the scent of smoke curling around you like a lullaby. And this time, maybe, your thoughts don't scramble to stay awake. They let go, not all at once, but slowly, like a temple bell fading into silence, like water sinking into earth, like a sheep counted, named, and forgotten. You don't know how long you've been lying there. Time has become a soft blur, like a smudge on a sundial, fading in and out of meaning. Around you, the world breathes. Wind rustles the leaves, distant chatter weaves through the air, and the occasional clink of amphora being stacked gives the rhythm of life a sleepy percussion. You stretch slightly beneath the fig tree's shelter. Your limbs are heavy, not with fatigue, but with release. The kind that comes from not needing to solve anything. Not tonight, not even tomorrow. The old man beside you shifts, brushing fig leaves from his lap. He doesn't look at you, but you sense something passed between you both. A wordless understanding. Insomniacs know each other, not by sight, but by silence. He reaches into a worn pouch and pulls out a small carved object. At first you think it's a charm, but as he hands it to you, you realize it's a tiny sheep, hand-carved, smoothed with age, its wood warmed by the sun and years of holding. You look at him in question. "Count this," he says, voice gravelly and amused. "Then count again." You smile. In ancient Greece, counting sheep wasn't just a metaphor, it was practical. Shepherds did it to keep track of flocks, Yes, but the rhythmic repetition had a hypnotic effect. And as towns grew noisy and minds grew louder, people took that rhythm with them into courtyards, onto rooftops, into the private shadows of their own thoughts. Repetition is a kind of spell, one that doesn't cast anything, just quiets the room inside your skull. You rub the carved sheep between your fingers. 1, then again, 2. It's not magic, but it is strangely grounding. The old man hums again, same note, same breath, same pace. You join him softly, not to harmonize, just to echo, like a reed bending in the same wind. In Athens, scrolls were written on the nature of sleep. Theories were debated in the agora. Hippocratic texts advised warm compresses, head massages, boiled lettuce water before bed. Yet still, people lay awake beneath oil lamps and counted ceiling tiles and whispered to the night. Historians still debate whether insomnia was more common in the ancient world or if modern distractions simply make us more aware of it. But in truth, sleeplessness is one of the oldest human inheritances, passed down like a lullaby with no melody. The sheep in your hand grows warmer. You don't count again, not out loud, just trace the edges with your thumb. The old man sighs, stands, stretches, and walks away. His spot is empty, but not cold. You pocket the sheep. You walk now, not aimlessly, but gently. Not with purpose, but with presence. A small temple looms in the near distance. Nothing grand, just 4 columns and a roof, a votive bowl at the entrance. No guards, no priests. A place of small prayers. Maybe to Hypnos, the god of sleep. Maybe to Asclepius. Maybe to no one in particular. Inside, the shadows are cooler. You light a taper from an ember, place it in the bowl. You don't pray. You don't even speak. You just stand. The flame dances, and your mind softens. You remember the field, the philosopher, the poppy, the fig, the sheep. You remember not sleeping. And then you remember, quietly, without alarm, that it's okay. You don't need to win. You don't need to conquer night like a city-state on the edge of war. You only need to rest beside it. Let it be the blanket, not the battle. You turn to leave, but not before whispering a thank you. To whom? You're not sure, but some things are worth whispering, even if no one listens. The morning sun is higher now, spilling warm gold across Athens, like someone upended a jar of honey. The streets are alive, just gently so. You can hear sandals slapping stone, vendors murmuring greetings, and the faint crack of fresh bread being torn by teeth still half asleep. And you, still without sleep, drift like a slow tide through it all. But something has changed. The heaviness that once sat like a stone in your chest has softened. It's not that the sleeplessness has vanished. It's that you've stopped fighting it. You walk toward the older part of town now, past the bathhouse with its steaming chimneys, past the theater whose carved steps are still cool from night. There, beyond a pair of low walls crawling with ivy, you find a small garden. You've passed it before, never entered. But today you do. It's quiet here, overgrown but tenderly so, with thyme, myrtle, and wild mint curling around broken stones. A small statue of Hypnos reclines near the center, eyes closed, wings rising from his temples. You sit beside him, not to pray, not even to meditate, just to be. And slowly, As you breathe in the scent of warm herbs and soft soil, you begin to notice something strange. The garden hums. Not loudly, not with insects or wind. It hums like your own heartbeat, like a story still being told. You lie down on the grass, watching the clouds drift overhead in unhurried herds. They look like sheep now. Of course they do. 1, 2, 3. You don't count aloud. You don't need to. Your mind has already begun the rhythm. A pebble presses into your side. You shift slightly. From the corner of your eye, a child tiptoes into the garden and leaves a sprig of rosemary by the statue's hand. No words, no fanfare, just a gesture. You wonder if they've also been awake too long, or maybe they're just beginning their day. Either way, they leave quietly. You reach into your satchel and remove the carved sheep. It fits in your palm perfectly, smooth from all your turning. You place it on the grass beside Hypnos's feet. Maybe someone else will need it next. You rise once more, not because sleep has found you, but because it doesn't matter. The pressure is gone. You walk back into the world, where goats bleat and pots clatter and figs ripen without urgency. The city doesn't notice your stillness. It simply welcomes it. Historians still argue whether insomnia was a malady in the ancient world, or merely a state of being. Some scrolls treat it as a symptom, others as a sign of divinity. Night wanderers were once prophets, or poets, or madmen. But you are simply a human, awake, alive, calm. And in a city where gods sleep and men dream of silence, that is enough. As you round the last corner to your home, the smell of baking bread reaches your nose, sweet and slow. The world is beginning its next chapter. You walk through your doorway and exhale, not in defeat, in arrival. Back inside your modest home, the shadows have shortened. The sunlight filtering through your shutters no longer feels like an invitation. It feels like an old friend resting its chin on your shoulder, saying nothing, simply present. You wash your hands in the basin by the door. The water is tepid now, kissed by the heat of the day, and it feels strangely soothing against your palms. You let it run over your fingers longer than you need to, watching the ripples catch the light. There's a comfort in such small rituals, the ones that don't fix anything, but soften the edges of your thoughts. You dry your hands on a cloth that smells faintly of laurel. Then you sit. Just sit. No rush to lie down again. No urgency to force sleep. Just you and the quiet company of a room that has held your wakefulness without judgment. You glance at the jar of poppy syrup once more. Still unopened. Still there if you need it. But less a remedy now, and more a reassurance. There's a scroll on your table. You unroll it gently. The ink is slightly faded, the letters careful and neat. It's a fragment of a poem attributed to Alcman, a Spartan poet known for his sleepy lullabies to the moon and stars. No one's certain if he existed, or if his name was just attached to old songs sung in the cool hours before dawn. One line reads, "Sleep comes to shepherds when stars begin to slip behind the hills." You mouth the words softly. Stars, shepherds, hills. Your fingers move idly across the surface of the scroll, tracing the shapes. Not reading now, just feeling the weight of language. You stand and open the window a little wider. The scent of bread baking is stronger now. A neighbor is singing a slow, repetitive tune, somewhere between a lullaby and a harvest song. A pigeon lands on your sill, eyes you with suspicion, then flutters away in a burst of feathers and indifference. You find yourself smiling, not out of joy, not even amusement. Just the quiet recognition that even in sleeplessness there's life. You begin tidying, not because it needs doing, but because movement feels gentle. You fold a cloth, sweep a bit of dust into your palm and toss it out the window. Adjust the cushion on the mat where you lay earlier. And then, perhaps out of habit, more than hope, you lie back down again. You close your eyes. You listen to the breeze fluttering the edge of your curtain like a lazy heartbeat. You picture the sheep, not numbered this time, just grazing, wandering, unconcerned. Historians still debate whether dreams were messages or mere digestion of daily life. Whether hypnosis came on silent wings or was simply the soft failure of the senses. But you don't need the answer. You simply lie still. You breathe. You rest. Maybe this is what ancient Greek insomniacs learned in the end. Not how to fall asleep, but how to be okay when they couldn't. You rise again, not because you're restless, but because your body asks for motion. Gently. The kind of motion that doesn't seek a goal. Just a small unfolding, like petals stretching toward the sky with no one watching. You step outside once more. The sun now rests high above, casting sharp-edged shadows along the worn stone paths. But somehow, the city is still not loud. Athens hums at midday, not booms. Voices weave through the air like drifting threads. A boy laughs as he chases a hoop down a dusty road. A mother hangs wet linen over a rope, her hands practiced and absent-minded. Two old men argue over olives with more affection than anger. The marketplace draws you in again, not for shopping, just for the rhythm. A temple bell chimes once. You pass a stand with jars of honey, their lids sealed in wax. Another with folded tunics in indigo and soft cream. A girl is selling cooling stones, smooth pebbles meant to be held in the hand, kissed by cold water and placed at the base of the neck to encourage rest in summer. You buy one. Why not? It's carved faintly with a curling vine pattern, someone's attempt at beauty that will never be signed or praised. But when you press it to your palm, it chills the heat in your bones. You sit under the shade of a fig tree. Again, not the same one from the garden, but a cousin. The figs are fuller now, near bursting. You watch a bee disappear into one and emerge, drunk with nectar. You sip from your water flask. The stone rests now against your neck, pulling you into coolness. Sleep doesn't come, but your thoughts have slowed. No racing, no cycling of what-ifs or why-not-yets, just presence. A vendor walks by, balancing a tray of small sesame cakes. You accept one with a quiet nod. It's soft, slightly stale, but sweet. You chew slowly. And as you do, a memory comes. Not your own, but one imagined. A philosopher, perhaps, thousands of years ago, lying on this same kind of stone, tasting the same kind of sesame, also unable to sleep. What did he think about? Did he count sheep? Did he bargain with hypnos? Did he write poems in the air that vanished before the ink could dry? Historians still argue whether insomnia was seen as failure or simply fate, whether sleeplessness was a sign of divine attention or bodily imbalance, whether remedies were more ritual or remedy. But it doesn't matter now. You've wandered through the temple, spoken to the herbalist, met the fig tree, held the carved sheep. You have done everything that could be done. You press the cooling stone to your forehead. The world goes quiet again. Not because it has changed, but because you have. You exhale, not in either way. You're not afraid of the dark anymore. You're friends with it now. The air has thickened just slightly, as it tends to in the late afternoon. Heat not from direct sun, but from the way stones hold on to warmth and release it slowly, like stories shared long after the moment has passed. You walk without hurry now, back along the familiar path toward home, your cooling stone tucked away in your satchel, still faintly chilled, like a secret. Your feet know the way, even when your thoughts wander. The poppies nod as you pass. The air smells of warm dust and the low tang of lemon balm, trodden underfoot near the courtyard walls. You pause just before your doorway and look up. The sky is beginning to yawn, clouds stretching, light thinning. The city that once crackled with the quiet energy of sleeplessness now begins its descent into that time between. The hush before lamps are lit, the pause before dinner, before storytelling, before the wide silence of midnight. Inside, your mat waits. The carved sheep is still resting at the foot of the statue, though you imagine perhaps someone else has already come and counted it. You light your oil lamp, trimming the wick with care. It flickers calmly, no sudden sputters or dramatic leaps, just steady light. You move through your space with intention now, folding your outer robe, washing your face again, this time with cooler water, as if to smooth away the remaining tension etched into your skin. You place the cooling stone beside your bedroll. You leave the shutters just slightly ajar, and for the first time, in what feels like a stretch of centuries, you settle not to fight sleep, not to demand it, not even to court it. You just lie down. Your arms rest easily at your sides. Your eyes remain half open for a moment longer, catching the last glow of sun as it turns to rose, then lavender, then something darker and richer still. Your mind flits, briefly. ... You remember the woman with lavender-stained fingers, the old man humming in the fig grove, the temple with no name, the sheep in your palm, the songs that never needed lyrics, and the questions. So many unanswered questions. Why we sleep, why we don't, whether the gods care, whether it matters. Historians still argue. But you are too tired to argue with anyone. Your thoughts now are slower than footsteps in thick sand. You breathe in. The room smells like dusk and something herbal. You breathe out. Sleep has not come, but you have stopped looking for it, and in doing so, you have opened the door. The sky outside darkens fully. No stars yet, but you feel them waiting. The carved sheep rests somewhere in another hand now. You are no longer alone in your sleeplessness. You never were. And finally, just maybe, your eyes close. Not because of exhaustion, but because the world is quieter now, and because you are ready to listen to its silence. And now, as your body settles deeper into stillness, let this gentle quiet hold you. There's nothing more to do. The day, with all its wandering, its rituals, its sleepless questions, is behind you now. There are no more fig trees to visit, no more herbs to collect, no philosophers to meet in the groves. Just this moment, this soft, unhurried pause in time. The breath moves in and out, in a steady rhythm, like footsteps in the dust, like sheep padding across a quiet hillside, like the turning of stars across a velvet sky. Feel the weight of your limbs, heavy now, not with struggle, but with calm. The mat beneath you holds your shape. The walls around you guard your peace. Outside, the streets of Athens sigh into silence. Let your thoughts drift like fig leaves on the breeze, loose, slow, and unconcerned about where they land. There is no rush. Sleep is not a race, nor a prize. It is an arrival. And whether you reach it tonight, or simply walk beside it a while longer, you are held in this ancient rhythm. You are not lost. You are simply waiting. So close your eyes if you haven't already. Let the story fade. Let the shadows lengthen. And let your mind soften gently into the folds of forgotten dreams. The night is long, but you are longer still. And somewhere, in the hush between breath and thought, Hypnos waits for you. He always does.